The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferens.
In the latest attack on federal workers, the Department of Defense has started terminating union contracts. Meanwhile, postal workers launch a campaign to support voting by mail. And today on the show, the United Campus Workers of Georgia. Welcome to the Friday, April 24th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. We have 2 individuals joining us on the show today. They are part of United Campus Workers of Georgia, which is affiliated with the Communication Workers of America Local 3821. We have David Hyde joining us along with Rachel Schrauben Yeates, and they've got some problems in Georgia due to the lack of collective bargaining rights for public employees in that state and their pre-majority status. The union, United Campus Workers, must organize workers directly, and create campaigns to generate wins. That's not easy. They started this campaign called Defend Remote Work. This is a campaign started with a survey and petition directed at the University System of Georgia, which allowed them to connect with impacted workers directly and organize actions like a recent rally at the Board of Regents meeting on Georgia State University's campus. Now, that generated a lot of press, and they're continuing that strategy and talking about it right here on America's Workforce. It's important they get this message out. But they have a giant hurdle to jump over because you have to understand, Georgia, number one, is a right-to-work state, and they do not allow public employees to bargain collectively. So David and Rachel will be joining us on behalf of the United Campus Workers of Georgia. Here's the website you want to go to. It's UCW-GA.com, UCW-GA.com. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at BoydWatterson.com. In the latest of the Trump administration's attack on federal employees' collective bargaining rights, here we go again, the Department of Defense has started terminating its union contracts. The DoD claims it is executing 2 executive orders, 14251 and 14343, both of which stripped federal employees of collective bargaining rights by determining that they fell under the national security exemption to the Federal Labor Management Relations Statute. Now, while President Trump signed both orders last year, court orders have temporarily blocked their implementation at certain agencies. But back in February, the Office of Personnel Management issued a memo directing agencies to once again begin the process of terminating and modifying collective bargaining agreements. Let's see now, on April 9th, just a couple of weeks ago, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, sent a memo to DoD leadership instructing them to begin terminating collective bargaining agreements. Enter Everett Kelly. Mr. Kelly, National President of AFGE, which represents 300,000 workers at the DoD, stated that Secretary Hegseth's decision to terminate the union rights of hardworking individuals who support our military is a cowardly continuation of this administration's unlawful attack on federal employees' First Amendment rights to belong to a union. The American Federation of Government Employees has vowed to continue to challenge the termination of the collective bargaining agreements. The American Postal Workers Union has announced an ad campaign in support of voting by mail. Now, the campaign was planned prior to President Trump's March 31st executive order that would bar the U.S. Postal Service from sending mail-in ballots to people not on a list of eligible voters created by the federal government. Well, in response to the order, the National Rural Letter Carriers Association stated that the Postal Service was not authorized to decide who is or who is not entitled to vote. And also, the president of the Postal Workers Union, Jonathan Smith, likewise noted that it is not the job of the postal workers to verify voter eligibility. And right now, 23 states are currently suing to block that executive order. I want to take some time now to talk about Workers' Memorial Day, which is going to be next Tuesday. And to close out the first week of our Workers' Memorial Day series, we jump forward to 1968 and a coal mine explosion in West Virginia that played out on live television right in front of the entire country. It's a story about 78 men who never came home and the families who turned that grief into federal law. This is all brought to you by our good friends at the National Labor Office at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. You know, Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, to loggers, and miners. And back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen their commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families and for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. At 5:30 in the morning, November 20th, 1968, an explosion ripped through the Console No. 9 coal mine near Farmington, West Virginia. 99 miners were underground. 21 got out, 78 did not. The fires burned for a week. The mine was eventually sealed, with 59 men still inside. The country watched it all on television, and then it watched the widows of those miners travel to Washington to testify before Congress. Within a year, the Federal Coal Mine Safety Act of 1969 was signed into law, mandating regular inspections, setting safety standards, and giving miners rights they never had before. Nearly a decade later, those protections were strengthened further, and the Mine Safety and Health Administration was born. So, 78 men went to work and did not come home. Their families made sure it meant something. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to join two individuals on behalf of the United Campus Workers of Georgia. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
Rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
we are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
We have two individuals joining us on the podcast today. We're going to start off with David Hyde, and they're both affiliated with the United Campus Workers of Georgia, which is connected to the Communication Workers of America, UCW-CWA Local 3821. The website to go to is UCW-GA.com. A lot of numbers and letters in there. David is being joined by Rachel Schrauben Yeates out of Kennesaw State University. David, I'm going to start with you. You're an organizing fellow. Maybe you could pick it up from there, and we salute what you're doing over there at college campuses all around the country. I know you're getting some help from the CWA on this one. Why don't you explain what's going on?
Thanks for having us on. Yeah, so there's a lot of active campaigns in Georgia. United Campus Workers is a wall-to-wall union for university staff, faculty, and student workers. Hopefully we can get into this in more detail, but what makes us kind of unique is we're organizing in states where we don't have bargaining rights for public sector workers.
Mm-hmm.
So that shapes our strategy, that shapes our organizing model. We're part of this larger southeastern UCW local with 8 other states.
Very familiar with the South. We're talking right to work. It's not easy in states like that, but it's happening because workers need a union. Let's be honest about that. Rachel, let's go to you. Rachel, a little bit on your background, and we can get into the specifics in the podcast today. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. I am a member-leader down at Kennesaw State University. As David mentioned, we're in the Union Fellows program. So that's part of our Southeast local looking to build up membership and have some more rigorous training down at Kennesaw State and all these Atlanta area schools. Yeah, we've been affected by a lot of things recently. As David mentioned, this Restore Remote Work campaign has been a real priority, as well as continual advocacy for a living wage, among other things.
When you say a living, what are the wages? What are we talking about?
Well, they're all public information. We're state employees. When I started working at the library, I was making less than $30,000. This is not uncommon. In election years, we'll get a couple of bumps when the legislators start to feel nervous. We can't even say that we've had sustained COLA increases, but in the past few years, we've had some base salary increases that were a long time coming.
And that's a full-time job, $30,000 a year.
That's a full-time job. Yep.
Wow. What about benefits? You get health care with that? Or?
We do get health care, but as we get any sort of base salary increase, then the health care rates go up. So it becomes a bit of a net.
That's what I was going to add. We have received cost of living adjustments in 22, 23, and 24. But for most workers, rising insurance premiums mostly counteracted that. And we have not received cost of living adjustments for 25 or 26. So wages are, a constant organizing challenge for us. And that's something that we were advocating for at Lobby Day, our annual Lobby Day in February, is for, to implement regular COLAs for full-time employees and part-time employees who have been left out of all of these increases. So part-time workers especially are feeling the pain of inflation currently.
When you talk about lobbying day, I assume you go to the legislature here and say, hey, look, I don't know about you. I'm making $30,000 a year. What can we do about that? Is that how that works or what?
We've had kind of a multi-pronged approach, but yeah, definitely getting as much face-to-face interaction as possible is always a priority. Appointments are a little bit difficult to nail down some of these folks, but we've got our allies in the House and Senate, definitely. And also this lobby day, things aligned with the Board of Regents meeting. So we had a good presence there and a walkout. I don't want to steal David's thunder. I know he's really been helming this campaign.
We had some great interactions with legislative allies. The kind of political reality in Georgia right now is the House, the Senate are controlled by Republicans along with the governor. So we're limited in terms of what pro-worker legislation gets passed in Georgia. In fact, a lot of anti-worker legislation got passed last year. We're fighting some bills right now. We have positive conversations. It's good to build those relationships and show our face and communicate our issues with them. But this year we tried to tie Lobby Day into a kind of other strategy of escalation with this campaign to restore remote work arrangements for staff. So last year there was a universal return to office mandate for staff, which was just a blanket, across the board, all staff workers. Even if you were hired remote, even if you were hybrid, we're all mandated to come back to the office, which just caused a lot of logistical issues, lack of office space, parking, extra expenses for employees. So you have to pay for campus parking, gas, transportation expenses. So we're framing this as a pay cut due to those added expenses without any extra compensation. It's also really affected workers who are caregivers or parents who relied on this flexibility to take care of elderly parents, relatives, etc., and really pushing those workers out of the labor force. We've escalated this campaign since last summer with some rallies, a petition delivery to the board. That has generated some comments in the press from them, but no changes in the policy. So at Lobby Day in February, it did coincide with a Board of Regents meeting. This is the governing body over the university system in Georgia, which is appointed regents appointed by the governor, really unaccountable to us as workers or also the public more broadly. These are unelected bankers and real estate executives for the most part. Only one of them has any education background, and there are no worker seats on the board. There remain a barrier for a lot of this kind of improvements we're trying to get for workers, aside from the Republican legislative body. So we staged a walkout. We staged a walkout at this board meeting and then kind of framed it as we're going to talk with legislators about this issue. And we're kind of working on some ways to escalate further. We have a letter that we're getting lawmakers to sign on to try and further pressure the board. It's causing people to leave. It's causing understaffed offices to be even further understaffed and causing just kind of a pileup of pressure on the workers who remain. So it's causing issues in just the operation of the institution at this point.
David, how many people are we talking about, and how many? You said because of this, a lot of workers are leaving. So how many are we talking about? How many have left so far because of the conditions?
That's a great question. So we'd been in communication with a reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution who actually did some open records requests and was able to get resignation and retirement rate increases. It's kind of a 3-month span after the mandate. And so some institutions, I think, maybe had limited workers that were working remote initially, but other institutions like Georgia Tech, for instance, has a high number of remote or hybrid employees. They saw over 100% increase. I think it was 113 increase in retirements compared to last year. Not remembering the resignations off the top of my head, maybe about 50 or 40% increase in resignations. Georgia State University, Georgia Southern University saw similar increases in retirements and resignations. And that was last year. That was numbers from July to October of last year. I think the impacts are really starting to hit now because people don't quit immediately. They look for other options. They try to hold on if they can, but we're working on getting some updated numbers, but it's been significant.
We're seeing a lot of companies that say no more remote work. And I don't know what that's all about. They probably figured if you're working remotely, you must be goofing around. You're probably watching TV, you're just sitting around the house, maybe taking a nap. I'm sure that perception is out there, but obviously you started this campaign, Defend Remote Work campaign. How's the campaign going right now in your assessment?
The campaign's been going great. It's been extremely, it's really mobilized a lot of workers and a lot of staff specifically. We should have mentioned earlier, I'm a staff worker, and so is Rachel at the library at KSU. I work in admissions at Georgia State. It's a staff-focused campaign. Faculty have not really been impacted by this. It's hitting people in their pocketbook, just in their day-to-day, just going into the office 5 days a week is exhausting. You're talking to people who are driving upwards of 2 or 3 hours a day commuting to work, and it's just, you don't have time to take care of basic family responsibilities, rest up for the next week. You got caretakers, parents who just were really relied on the flexibility of remote work, and I'll say on a stereotype of government employees like not working at home or whatever. That's also something that the university system has implied, is that people have been abusing this. I want to strongly push back on that. People can remain productive at home while they take care of other types of family responsibilities and watch their kids. If you've ever worked in an office, I can tell you that it's not really the most productive environment for a lot of people, especially if you're doing tasks that are conducive to isolated or intensely focused kind of work. So the campaign's been great. We've talked to workers. We had a survey and a petition that really drew people in, and held some rallies at Board of Regents meetings. Board of Regents is the governing agency over the university system in Georgia, public university system. This all kind of escalated this year end of last year into a petition delivery, which generated some press attention. We can maybe get into the lobby day action and what we did at lobby day in February as well.
Okay, we'll get into that. Rachel, I want to go back to you. You work at the library. I understand the wages are not that great. Can you speak to that so our listeners to this podcast realize what you're going through?
Yeah, there are a lot of entry-level positions, a number of folks jumping into positions they're overqualified for, but take what's available. Sometimes that's the mindset in academia, that you have a passion for the work, so you should take whatever pay. When I started, that was under $30K, and I was not alone. Many others at that pay band, not far from it still. It's not a living wage in the area around Kennesaw State University. A couple years ago, when we did a survey, the union looked at what a living wage for just a single person living in an apartment within a fair driving distance of the university. And at that point, like 2020, they estimated it at $41K. So a lot of folks struggling to get by on what was a full-time salary.
Yeah, that's well below where it should be. No doubt about that. Let me guess, too, a lot of people, you mentioned driving. I would imagine the cost of living has to be a factor there, so they probably have to live farther out, which is going to cost more for gas. Mm-hmm. Am I correct in assuming that, Rachel?
Yeah. So the return to work, call it what you want, it's an effective pay cut if you hadn't had to pay for transportation. And also, as David mentioned, that cost on time, adding another couple of hours to your workday just to go to a building and have very little face-to-face interaction.
This theme park thing where you can't afford to live in the city that you work in, so you just are commuting every single day.
Yeah. If the population benefiting from your service is able to live in that area, but all the workers have to travel in, you're not living, I don't know where I first heard this, but you're not living in a city, you're living in a theme park.
Jeez. David, you mentioned Lobby Day, which was a couple of months ago, it was in February. How did that go for you?
It went very well, I would say. In Georgia, we're somewhat limited in the pro-worker legislation that we can get passed due to the Republican majority in the House and the Senate and the governor. being a Republican. But we still go to lobby day and we still do advocate for ourselves, talk to legislative allies and some Republicans too. They will listen to us occasionally. This year, we were able to synchronize the lobby day with this remote work campaign because there was a Board of Regents meeting. It's a block away from the Georgia Capitol. So we were able to hold a walkout after they continued to, refuse to engage with us. They kind of like to pretend we don't exist because we don't have the collective bargaining rights in Georgia for public workers. So we staged a walkout and then went over and walked to the Capitol to discuss the issue with lawmakers there. And, we have some stuff planned to continue the pressure on them.
And we have to note, too, that a number of these regents were calling in to the meeting. It was a hybrid meeting. One guy was driving in his car. Ridiculous.
Oh, so remote's okay for them, but not for you. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Exactly.
David and Rachel, I got to take a quick break here. We're talking about what's going on in the state of Georgia. Those of you listening, this show is popular all around the country. And there's states that get it when it comes to collective bargaining, states like Illinois, states like California. Here in Ohio, we've had a tax on that, but we still have, especially for public sector workers and all that. But it's amazing the contrast in America, what you have to go through. I want to talk more about that and also what's next here for this campaign. David Hyde and Rachel Schrauben Yeates joining us on behalf of the United Campus Workers of Georgia. And the website you want to go to is UCW-GA.com. Back in a few minutes, you're listening to America's Workforce.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LIUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LIUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. We are now celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Blues, developing the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families. Working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. Learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Let's go back to our featured guests today. We have 2 of them, David Hyde and Rachel Schrauben Yeates, on behalf of United Campus Workers of Georgia, UCW-CWA, that's Communication Workers of America, Local 3821. They're organized, but no first contract. We're talking state of Georgia, right-to-work state. That's what happens in right-to-work states. Remote work. Now, you started this Defend Remote Work campaign. University's saying you got to get back in there. It's going to be very costly for a lot of workers there driving long distances, the cost of gas. And this is work that could be done remotely. All right, with that being said, Rachel, I want to talk to you about this. People are saying, you know what? Not going to happen. I'm leaving. And that's going to cause some problems for the university. What are we looking at? What kind of numbers are we looking at right now?
Yeah, we got some good press coverage earlier in the year, and the AJC actually published, Atlanta Journal-Constitution published some data looking at the past couple of years, noted that in 2025, so this is just a little bit after the return to work mandate was released, we're seeing about 35 more retirements in 2025 compared to that same period in 2024, and that's at big universities across Metro Atlanta, and looking to see probably increases there, like as the toll of these logistical and kind of, childcare, family care, all these different choices people are weighing. We might see some more early retirements or turnover hit in this year and next.
So what's the university doing about this? I mean, there's got to be a breaking point at some time. If more workers leave, well, somebody's got to do the job here. What are they saying? How are they reacting to this?
Well, they are being very stubborn and pretending like this is not an issue thus far. We have heard internally there's a lot of university administrators and middle managers who are not happy with this and don't agree with it. But the way that the university system of Georgia is run is kind of like a fiefdom. And Sonny Perdue is our current chancellor, and he and a board of real estate executives and bankers are the ones who make these decisions, largely unaccountable to the public or to workers. So that's kind of the situation we're in. We will continue to pressure. We've gotten wins before. I think there is some type of face saving that they have to do, where a big campaign we had, for instance, I think in 2019, special institutional fee was a fee that grad students had to pay. It was like a $900 fee every year. No one knew what it was for. We had a big campaign. It turned out that a lot of this money was actually going back into the budget to pay grad students. So they were kind of paying their own stipends with this fee. And through public pressure, and we testified at Georgia Senate Education Committee meeting, they did back down and eliminate this fee. But it's still something they claim and brag about today that they did that, not that the union pressured them publicly into doing that. So I can see a similar thing happening with this campaign when they can no longer deny the turnover, the issues that it's causing, that they'll quietly roll it back and then say that, we figured it all out. We figured out how to do it correctly.
Mm-hmm. Out of the kindness of their heart, they said, okay, no more fee. I get it. David, if you don't mind, I mean, you're organized down there. You're affiliated with the CWA, very powerful national union, but you don't have a contract. And again, this is a right to work state, and you have to be clear about this. You don't have those rights. When you tell them you want a contract, what do they tell you? You say, well, you can't do it here in Georgia. Is that the response that you get there or what?
Yes. Yeah. So the university system is going to basically ignore any attempts to bargain with us and pretend like we don't exist. We still pressure collectively, right? So like this model of organizing we have built is to work outside of the bounds of an LRA and, this traditional bargaining structure. It's direct worker-to-worker solidarity. It's kind of like multifaceted campaigns where we get workers together do direct actions. And, we are pushing for collective bargaining in Georgia. That's a political battle. So we do have lawmakers who have introduced bills to legalize collective bargaining, and we campaign and we endorse candidates. Some of our other states in Colorado and Virginia, which have UCW locals in them, are actually in the middle of a collective bargaining campaign to legalize it for public employees in those states. So they're a few years ahead of us. I think, we've got a really interesting, exciting potential in Georgia to maybe elect a Democratic governor and flip. I don't know if the House or Senate is really like that close to flipping, but we're getting closer to that point in Georgia.
Yeah. Keep your eyes on Virginia. Things are changing there. Very similar, and they may get rid of right to work over there. Getting back to the Defend Remote Work campaign, and it sounds like you got a lot of energy behind it. My question to both of you here is, what's next? I mean, it seems like you got a good ground game going. You've been vocal. You went to the Capitol. You talked to the lawmakers. You talked to the Board of Regents and all that. What's your strategy? And maybe, I don't know if you should really spell it out so they're preparing for the onslaught here. But you got to maybe share with me a couple of ideas on the next plan of attack here. David, what do you think?
I can handle that. So we're readjusting some strategies. We're working with some legislative allies to maybe pen a letter that they can sign on to give to the Chancellor, Sonny Perdue. We're also trying to pivot into some shop floor campaigns, because there is this new process that they've created to approve remote work for certain employees. It is mostly BS. They deny most of them. Very, very, very limited circumstances have they approved them. We're trying to work on shop floor campaigns to look at specific departments, specific jobs where we can make like a really strong case that like you will lose this person or this department won't function without it. For instance, there's IT people in cybersecurity who don't have an office space. They have to go into shared office space where they're working on very sensitive cybersecurity kind of stuff that's really not, you need an office or a secure environment for that kind of a thing. Those kinds of things is what we're working on, continuing to generate pressure on the board, show them all the detrimental effects that this is causing.
It sounds like they're trying to create an unworkable environment. If they want you to go back to work, you can't work there. That's exactly what's going on there. Rachel, I'm going to give you the last word here. How are you holding up? The people that you're talking to, this has been a fight. It's got to be frustrating at times, but you got to keep hold your head up on this whole situation. What do you see ahead?
The biggest source of strength I found is just in my fellow union members and finding that solidarity, not just on campus in a place that can feel very, very bleak most days of the week, but across the state, across the region, across the country, connecting. And I would encourage anybody who is in higher ed to see where they can plug in. I think as David said, we've got a long road, but we've been on this road. So the more pressure we can put on those higher up, the more we can let them know there are more of us than there are of them, the better.
Well, feel free to share this podcast with as many members as you can and other unions as well, because it takes collective action. It really does. You want change, you got to build an army, a navy. You need it all. You need all the armed forces right now, and they're all under the union banner. So let's keep in touch on this. David Hyde and Rachel Schrauben Yeates, on behalf of United Campus Workers of Georgia, UCW-CWA Local 3821. And here's the website you want to go to. It's UCW-GA.com, UCW-GA.com. Thanks to both of you. Please keep in touch, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up on Monday, the low-wage 20 companies in America, and the latest from the Transportation Trades Department of the AFL-CIO. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful weekend.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.